There is a sound right before a Zippo lighter sparks to life. A tiny metallic click. Back in Iowa, that sound meant my father was lighting his evening pipe after a hard day in the cornfields. It meant safety. It meant home. But here, in the suffocating heat of the Quang Ngai province, in March of 1968, that click was the sound of my soul dying. They told us we were fighting communism. They told us we were bringing freedom to the jungle. But as I stood there, looking at the terrified eyes of a mother clutching her baby, feeling the cold metal of my M16 against my hip, I realized we weren't saviors. We were the monsters hiding in the dark. My name is Thomas Miller, but everyone just called me Tommy. I was 19 years old, just 19. Before the jungle, my entire world was a 300-acre farm near Cedar Rapids. My hands were calloused from pulling weeds, not from loading 30-round magazines. I went to the Methodist church every Sunday, memorized scriptures, and believed in the absolute truth of right and wrong. The world was simple. God was good, America was just, and if you worked hard, the earth rewarded you. Then the draft notice arrived in the mail, a piece of paper that weighed heavier than a tractor. My mother cried into her apron. My father handed me his silver pocket watch, told me to do my duty and keep my head down. He fought in Europe in '44. He thought he understood war. He thought it was about lines on a map, about pushing back an army in gray uniforms. But Vietnam wasn't Europe. When the ramp of our C-130 dropped at the Da Nang Air Base, the heat hit me like a physical punch. It smelled of aviation fuel, rotting vegetation, and sweat. I was assigned to the 11th Infantry Brigade, a fresh replacement, a fucking new guy. That's what the veterans called me. They didn't even bother learning my name. They knew the statistics. In 1968, right after the Tet Offensive, 19-year-olds had a habit of returning home in aluminum transfer cases before anyone could remember their faces. We were sent into the bush on search and destroy missions. We humped the boonies for 32 days straight. The jungle was a living, breathing entity that wanted us dead. The temperature was 105 degrees, humidity at 99%. My flak jacket felt like a lead coffin pressing against my ribs. The worst part wasn't the heat. It was the absolute crushing paranoia. We were fighting ghosts. The Viet Cong didn't wear uniforms. They didn't march in formations. They were the shadows in the tree line. They were the farmers tending rice paddies by day, who would bury anti-personnel mines on our patrol routes by night. On day 12, a guy named Miller, funny, we shared the same last name, stepped on a bouncing Betty. It sprang out of the dirt to waist height before detonating. I won't describe what it did to him. I can't. But I remember kneeling in the red mud, wiping his blood off my dog tags. After that, something broke in our squad. Our staff sergeant, a hardened lifer on his second tour, stopped looking at the locals as people. To him, every child was a potential scout. Every old man was a spotter. Every bamboo fence hid a punji pit smeared with feces to cause infection. The fear turned into anger. And the anger, it began to rot our souls. We were losing our humanity, one muddy footstep at a time. We were a pack of rabid dogs just waiting for someone to let us off the leash. March 22nd. We approached a nameless hamlet near the Pinkville area. Intelligence said it was a VC stronghold, a staging ground for the bastards who had been ambushing us all week. We swept in at dawn, M16s raised, adrenaline masking the exhaustion. We kicked in bamboo doors, dragging people out into the central dirt plaza. But there were no soldiers, no military-age males, just old men with faces like dried leather, women chewing betel nut, and children, so many children. They looked at us with a mixture of terror and absolute exhaustion. They had been caught in the crossfire of this war for a decade. I lowered my rifle. My Iowa farm boy instincts kicked in. I saw a scared little girl holding a mangy dog, and for a second, I remembered my little sister. Then, one of our guys found a hidden cache under a hut. 3 large bags of unhusked rice, and a single rusted SKS rifle wrapped in oilcloth. It was enough. The sergeant's eyes went dead. He pointed at the bags. "Charlie's pantry," he spat. He turned to the village elder, an old man who was begging on his knees in Vietnamese. The sergeant didn't understand him. He didn't want to. "They're all VC sympathizers," the sergeant yelled to us. "They feed the ghosts that kill our boys. We are shutting down the supply line." The order hung in the humid air like a physical weight. Zippo Mission, burn it all. My squad mates didn't hesitate. I watched guys I had shared sea rations with, guys who talked about their girlfriends in Ohio and Texas, pull out their lighters and walk toward the thatched roofs. Within seconds, the first hut went up in a roar of orange flame. I stood frozen. I was looking at a hut where a young woman stood, clutching her baby. She was screaming, begging me with her eyes. My hand trembled. In my pocket, my fingers brushed against my grandfather's silver watch and the cold metal of my Zippo lighter. I remembered Sunday school, "Thou shalt not destroy thy neighbor's house." The words echoed in my head, useless and hollow. "Miller!" the sergeant screamed, getting in my face, his breath smelling of stale tobacco and madness. "Are you a sympathizer? Do you want to join them? Burn the fucking hut, Private. That is a direct order." The peer pressure. The fear of court-martial. The sheer, overwhelming wave of collective madness. It broke me. My hand pulled out the Zippo. I flipped the lid. I sparked the flint. I walked up to the dry straw wall of the woman's home. I couldn't look her in the eyes. I stared at the dirt, and I touched the flame to the straw. The dry thatch caught instantly. The heat washed over my face, blistering my skin. The woman was dragged away by her hair, screaming as her life, her history, her shelter turned to ash. I watched the smoke rise, blotting out the Vietnam sun. We burned the entire village. We killed their livestock to deny the enemy food. We turned their world into a blackened scar on the earth. As we marched out, the column was completely silent. The adrenaline was gone. Only the shame remained. I looked at my hands. They were covered in soot. I tried to wipe it off on my uniform, but the black stain just smeared. It felt like it had seeped into my skin, down into my bones. I survived my tour. I flew back to Iowa 12 months later. I went back to the farm. But the boy who had left that farm, the boy who believed in God, in right and wrong, in the goodness of men, he never came back. He died on March the 22nd, 1968. He burned to death the moment he sparked that Zippo lighter. I am just the ghost that had to carry his memories. War leaves scars that no metal can cover. If you want to hear more untold stories from the front lines, subscribe to Echoes of War. We must remember so we never repeat.